and you dig it up. Now the grass that you dig up, you dig it out in blocks, little blocks, and you put it in your wheelbarrow. Don't throw it away. Put it in your wheelbarrow. You dig up about 8 inches to a foot. Alright? When you dig that little trench, 8 inches to a foot, all the material you take out. Now, step back. Alright, you use the wheelbarrow like that. Put your grass cubes are gonna, 1 foot cubes are gonna be there as well. Leave them there, alright? Next you follow and do another one. So another 1 foot, you take another 1 foot. So let's say your bed starts, can everybody see down here? Right? Let's say this is your bed. And it's gonna be that way. So what I do is I dig out these 3 blocks of grass and I dig out the entire trench. So I have this little area right here. I take that, put it in the wheelbarrow. Then I step on to the other one, 1 foot again. Now the grass that I took out of this one, I flip it over and put it on the bottom of the first drain. You understand? Alright? The other one, flip it over, put it with the grass downwards. Why do you want the grass downwards? So that it dies. Alright? And you can try this at home. You cover it and leave it there and dig it up a month later. You will see that there is this nice dark humus down there. So you have that compost on there. So it does give you that nitrogen-based fertilizer down at the bottom of the bed. So all you do is flip the grass on the bottom of this bed. Then you're going to add some fertilizers, you're going to add some compost. Alright? Alright, we talked about that already. So that's how the little drain should look. Alright? Then you want, this one doesn't have any grass, so it doesn't show the grass there. But what you want to do is on the bottom here, flip the grass over and cover the trench again. And then start adding whatever fertilizer you want to add to it. Alright, in this case we have a little bit of compost. Alright, you can also add a little bit of rock fertilizers. We talked about that. We know what our fertilizers are. So we can use whatever we have there. You have manure, you want to put manure, but please don't overdo it. We get a tendency to over fertilizer in this stage, and that basically will hamper your planting in the future. This is just a little bit. For a drain like this, 1 foot, 2 handfuls of rock fertilizer is enough. All you gotta do is sprinkle it over. Just like if you're seasoning meat, make sure that everywhere gets a little bit, a little piece. Sorry. So that is how you want to put it at the base, and then what you want to do is do it by layers. So you put a layer of compost, then you put a layer of the soil you dug out first. Alright? So the soil that you had in the wheelbarrow, you want to put a layer of that. Then a layer of compost again, then a layer of that, a layer of compost, and a layer of that. Alright? Until you build it up, until you use up all the soil. When you're doing this, you will see that your bed, if this is the ground level, it will come from here to here. It will build up about 8 inches to a foot off the ground. Right? And that's because you're loosening up all the soil, you're breaking up all those, you're creating air pockets, and also the compost that you're adding and the fertilizer you're adding will build up. So this is what it will look like when you're finished. This is the piece that hasn't been done yet. Right? It's very easy. And as long as you do that once, you don't have to do it again. And you follow that and you do that every trench. So you finish with this little trench, you are ready to build it up, you step to another one. Alright? You dig it up and you fill the other one that you just dug. So this one will fill this one will fill this one, and so forth until you reach the end. So when you reach the very end, what you're going to do is use the one that you dug up first and fill the last one. You get it? Makes sense? Does everybody understand? You are adding the fertilizers. You can mix them when at the base of the, or at the very bottom of the bed. You can mix them up. Please do not break up big squares of grass though, if you have grass. If you don't, then that's fine. Alright? Giving you an example of the steps you need to follow. And you notice the trench continues. This trench, this piece is going to cover this side, then you're going to be left with the trench here. This piece is going to cover this trench, and so forth, and that's how you move. It will take you a little bit to finish a bed, but once you are done with it, and it does require hard labor, it does require some exercise. And that's the fun part about gardening is, I see a lot of people running, I see a lot of people doing workout. Notice this guy is using some compost, a little bit of rock fertilizers in there, mixing it up, and adding back the same soil that the bed once had, alright? Don't overdo it again, please. And then at the end, at the very end of the bed, you see you take the one that you had previously, that you dug up first, and you add it back. Using the same soil that you had in that same bed before, or using that same original soil. All of our beds are made this way. That's the first, like whenever we want to install a bed, that's the only procedure we use. Once we've done that, we don't allow anybody to step inside the beds, because stepping inside the beds will compact the soil and you will have to do it again. Right? So if you understand the hard work that goes into it, the day somebody stepping in a bed, you'll probably broke your foot. Right? And then you have animals, dogs, that would probably go and lie in the bed because it would be a lot cool. It'd be easy for them to dig. Yeah. And yeah, you probably have the temper, blood pressure, and all that stuff might go up a little bit. Alright, now once you're finished with all this, at the very top, you can add another sprinkle of compost or some sort of fertilizer, rock fertilizer. Just a few, just a light dust. If you have compost, a lot of compost, then you can put an inch of compost on top of the bed when you're finished with the double top. And then to top it off, remember what I told you in the very beginning. We were talking a little bit about mulches. This needs to stay away from sun, direct sunlight. This is bad. If you spread the compost 1 inch apart, spread it in the whole bed, and you leave it exposed to the sun, you're messing up. You're basically wasting your compost, because what will happen is that the heat from the sun will cook the microorganisms that are in the compost. So it needs some sort of barrier from the sun. What can you use? You can use coconut fiber. What else? You can use like a mesh. And yeah, you can use a cover a little bit away from your bed, true. But we try to cover right on the soil. Alright? Like a mulch. A mulch is immediately right on the soil, right on top of the soil. So you could use the coconut fiber, sorry. What else? Newspaper, excellent. You can use newspaper. What else? You can use wood chip. The new wood chippings, you can use that. Some people use sawdust. You can use sawdust. Please do not apply a thick layer of sawdust. And for those who work with sawdust, will notice that if you apply a thick layer, now we use sawdust on our paths. And for that we apply a generous layer. Now whenever we do that, it produces like a crust. And when you water, the water goes on the side. That is a no-no for your bed. Alright? So the layer on a bed like this of sawdust or wood chip would be very, very thin. Alright? It's just to reduce the sunlight hitting directly on your bed. Any questions? You can use some people actually have the raw material. For example, if you have your kitchen scraps, you can build this over a period of time. It doesn't have to be one day thing. For example, if you dig one little drain, and if you have your food scraps, you bury it. One line, you bury it. You dig the next line. Your food leftovers, you bury it in there again, right at the bottom, instead of having the grass. If you don't have the grass, bury your food scraps, right? And so forth until 8 months later, depending on how much you eat or how much waste you have filled up this entire bed. And the planting, by the time you fill up the very end, do not plant at the very end yet. Wait until it start planting from this side where you started 8 months ago. By that time, all that food that you buried is completely broken down and it's safe for you to plant. Anything that breaks down creates what? Heat. And this we learned in compost. Remember I told you? When the compost pile is breaking down, what does it produce? Heat. That is why you don't pile up anything on the root base of a tree. People that rake their leaves on the root base of a tree, bad idea. Because the leaves will need to break down, and for the leaves to break down generates heat and it will scorch the tree around. If you don't believe me, take a little bit of compost or a little bit of cocoa peat, stick it on whatever flower you want. You want bougainvilleas, you want hibiscus, stick it like a sweet there and leave it. 2 months later you come back. Make sure that area is moist. 2 months later you come back and you will see that area has roots. You can cut it, stick it in a pot, and you have a new plant. And propagation. I'm not going to step into propagation, but it's just an example that I'm using. Alright? Any questions with the double dog bed? Vegetables. Most vegetables have the root system that would extend about 1.5 feet the most. So you can easily raise your beds to about 2 feet and fill them with whatever soil you want, and that's fine. Now you would need to fertilize your soil a little bit more because we know that limestone is what? What's that?
Porous.
It's what?
Porous.
It's porous, yeah, in the sense that remember we looked at pH. It's an alkaline. Limestone is an alkaline, and most plants like slightly acidic. So in order for you to get that slightly acidic, fertilizing would make it slightly acidic. Rainfall would make it slightly acidic. Alright? So you need to give it a little bit more fertilizer because the bed that you installed will eventually take the minerals and nutrients of the area around it. Leaching will get in there. So eventually, if your bed is slightly acidic, it will become alkaline over a period of time because of what's around it. Okay? So you can, depending on what you want to grow, you can build up beds and grow in there. But if you want to grow fruit trees, then that's a little bit different. If you're looking, for example, into citrus, then that's a lost case. You probably want to give up on citrus. Unless you buy huge pots and plant them in there, and citrus will grow fruit in pots if you know how to do it.
What if the soil is clay? Do you recommend adding sand? Like
ours is clay, but with the mixture that we use here, especially with the compost, it does allow that aeration to happen and the building up. So once you add a lot of organic matter in here, you'll get earthworms, you'll get a lot of micro and macro organisms going up and down, creating those holes. So eventually the clay becomes a little bit of a loamy soil because of all the worms and everything coming in there, in and out. So the compacted clay that you would have will get built up and get into nice soil. And that is what this idea is all about. It's just building up that hard, nasty soil that you have. Or if you have good soil, it's just feeding it, just adding to it. Remember, soil is alive and you need to feed it. Anything that is alive